Excellencies, at Global Pulse, we recognize that the only way to test innovative ideas and research is through a hands-on approach using local expertise. Pulse Labs are a network of country-level innovation centers. The labs are established in partnership with member state governments. They will bring together government, the United Nations country team, academia, and the private sector. Pulse Labs are physical spaces for open innovation. In these spaces, new tools and approaches for using real-time data will be researched, developed, tested, and scaled. Pulse Lab New York will serve as a hub for sharing learning and experiences amongst labs and partners. Pulse Labs will discover new indicators in real-time data designed to complement the indicators that governments already track. Once identified, tested, and verified, the most robust indicators discovered could be monitored on an ongoing basis to contribute to government and United Nations programs at the country level. In addition, labs will work with the private sector to develop ways to safely share and analyze data. Today, we are very pleased to let you know that the governments of Indonesia and Uganda will host the first Pulse Labs in Asia and Africa. Both labs open in 2012. To provide more insight on the Pulse Lab, let's hear from the government and the people of Indonesia.
The nature of today's crisis is changing. Crisis has become more complex and also often intercede with the localized emergencies, compounding the impact on the poor and the vulnerable.
It's interesting to note that Indonesia already has response systems in place, but what they don't have is basically the real-time data that informs the mitigation strategies to crisis and that can inform timely responses. So that is indeed where the Global Pulse initiative can make a very important contribution.
The data that we have is very much lag behind. So I believe if we know that where and what household actually impacted, so we can design a very good policy to the impacted household.
For us, it will bring a new kind of approach to making those surveys, to tracking vulnerability, using social media, using IT, using mobile phones. And this is very important because up to now, governments can track these vulnerabilities, but they're not on a real-time basis.
I think Indonesia is like the perfect place to have a Pulse Lab. Firstly, because there's 110 million people in Indonesia who live on less than $2 a day, so even minor shocks can have really catastrophic impacts here. Secondly, the Indonesian government's really committed to trying to improve the lives of the poor and make them more resilient to shock. So I think the policy environment is really receptive to new ideas and new information.
Having phone which access you, which connect you to the whole world, you can share something which can be very important.
The uses of mobile devices are growing very significantly. I believe today we have 180 million mobile users in Indonesia and close to 50 million internet users. And that shows that IT technology is being used by almost everybody. We have a very active community here. We collaborate in a lot of initiatives. We also actively collaborate internationally.
This kind of high-frequency data become very important to protect the population from the adverse impact of the global crisis.
As we have heard, A Pulse Lab can provide value in learning how to understand real-time digital signals and how these signals relate to development. Now let's go through some of the values of a Pulse Lab. Labs contribute to a better understanding of changes in a population's well-being. This could help the public sector to more effectively target scarce resources and act when there is still time to prevent development rehearsals. In the more immediate term, Pulse Labs allow local government institutions and United Nations partners to identify critical information gaps and time lags in understanding the needs of vulnerable populations. It helps to gain access to new sources of real-time information, gain the tools needed for real-time information analysis, analyze the digital data, discover real-time proxy indicators, develop local capacity within government and the United Nations to understand and use new data sources and technologies, and finally, to demonstrate regional and global leadership in innovation. Now, we would like to tell you about some of the principles that drive Pulse Labs. First, labs are government-led. Government is the driver of innovation and experimentation. And it is government that will decide how to access, analyze, and share data. This will ensure compliance to national legislation on privacy and data protection. Labs will be different in every country because they will be designed in the way that best serves a country's specific needs and priorities. Labs will derive their value from being collaborative and multidisciplinary, as this allows government to access diverse and new sets of expertise. Partnerships with private sector data providers will also be established. For example, working with mobile service providers would allow the Pulse Labs to be a broker of new sources of information that could point to emerging vulnerabilities within a population. With these few facts in mind, we would now like to turn to Uganda and hear about our first Pulse Lab in Africa.
Good morning, New York. It's good talking to you from Kampala. I'm happy to be talking about Global Pulse, and more specifically about the Pulse Lab that is being established in Kampala. Government of Uganda and the civil society would like to take maximum advantage in using this lab to be able to get real-time information in dealing with problems that affect the ordinary people in our country.
As an emerging technology hub in the region, Uganda has built a growing community of technology users and innovators.
So we certainly need to rely on real-time data so that we have the pulse of what the communities, the vulnerable communities are really thinking. How can we, UN country team, use this real-time data to better plan, to better implement our programs? And this given our limited resources as well.
There are sources of data we haven't been able to reach, but with your mechanism, we shall be able to reach them.
So each problem is being looked at from different perspectives, and that allows the solution to be much better than normally it would be. It creates a platform where it brings together a whole range of stakeholders that normally we would not work with.
So we have to use these tools to be much more effective and be much more result-oriented.
This will be grassroots information from the recipients of the services or from the implementers themselves and the local policymakers and local authorities.
We have brilliant students, but whose ability to conceptualize is largely constrained by the local environment. So if you're working with the UN Global Pulse facility, you can identify the small quality students that have the capacity, or even members of staff who have the competence to bring value to the Pulse Lab.
Giving real-time information through the Pulse Lab, government, and the civil society, and anybody responsible will be able to take appropriate measures and even preventive measures so that we can deliver better services for our people.